Hello, welcome to the Scientology Money Project on YouTube with your host, Jeffrey Augustine, Agent Augustine, if you will. I'm doing a late night and on short notice, so it's like 11:15 at night, April 28, 2024. Hey, I was out working today. I was out working and, out on a case. And so anyway, it's one of those days from a really hard day, a lot of work. Rode hard, put away wet, as they say. But I'm good. I'm all good. I'm good. Come home to my lovely wife. Good food. And so I'm, on the way home, I was stopping to get something to eat, Stopped at the market. The irresistible allure. The guilty pleasure. National Enquirer. Chilling court records expose secret menace. Scientology's evil war on the cops. And it says Los Angeles prosecutor scared into silence. Celebrity believers diving for cover. Stalking break-ins and intimidation. There we see convicted rapist Danny Masterson, Jenna Elfman, John Travolta, Tom Cruise, Elizabeth Moss. So the National Enquirer caught my attention. And basically the article, and you can go buy it, go pick up a copy. I always like to buy, copies of these things to read. And because they're just interesting to see what the tabloids are talking about. And sometimes there's really good information in here. Now, this theme of Scientology's evil war on the cops. Well, shit, howdy, National Enquirer. I could have told you that Scientology's been at war with the cops and the governments of the world since 1950, the day May 9th, 1950, when L. Ron Hubbard launched Dianetics. He has been at war with the cops. So, National Enquirer, you could have called me. I'm your friendly neighborhood private investigator. I do this shit. You could have called a lot of people, and but I wanted to show you some doctrines. And basically, the article discusses during the Danny Masterson serial rape case, of course, where he was convicted on 2, how church operatives allegedly chased prosecutor Reinhold Mueller, caused him problems. We know that Vicky Poboreski, criminal defense lawyer for Church of Scientology, with Thomas Messer, wound up with records from Mr. Mueller's office. And why Judge Almeida didn't, go above the $950 so that it would go into their permanent records. But Vicky Poboreski, she's certainly at war with the cops, in my opinion. Thomas Messer, for sure, was found to turn over the records, so he was working for Scientology. In my opinion, Thomas Messer he turned records over. He knew he was violating his duties as a lawyer, and he's dirty. He's friends with Harv Levin at TMZ, leaks a lot of stuff, gets some air cover. But you got to know, Scientology has been at war with the cops and governments of the world since 1950, and they've developed it. And so, if you're a stupid cop like Tim Tallman at LAPD, and you work for them part time, and you appear at their, you appear, at their events, and senatorial U.S. Senate candidate Adam Schiff, Congressman Adam Schiff, recently appeared with Timmy Tallman. So if you're a cop and you're stupid enough to work for Scientology, that's on you. You're taking cult blood money and you're being played for an idiot. And you're probably, if you go over to dinner for Celebrity Center and you get schmoozed and you give them a little bit of information, that could be criminal. So you better watch what you're doing. And a lot of cops don't. A lot of cops don't. And I just want to show you something I've been collecting for a long time. This is all on LAPD cops and on LAPD. That's just part of what I have, part of what I compiled. That's just part of the shit. You got to know people like me compile stuff on LAPD. Now, because it goes to the feds and other places, and it's not actionable now, it may be in the future, but just the stuff in this file alone, yeah, just the network map. It all gets put down. So these cops who and even the people, even the politicians, they don't realize that they're stupid if they're going to hang around Scientology. It sticks. You look what happened to Karen Bass when President Biden was then candidate Biden running for office. Mayor Bass of Los Angeles, then Congresswoman Karen Bass, was on Biden's shortlist to be vice president. When it came out about her association with Scientology, it hurt her chances to become the vice president of the United States. So Scientology's war, certainly during the Danny Masterson trial, we saw the fuckery of operatives like Vicky Poboreski. And there's some other names, because I was there watching the trials. And obviously the Poboreski was sending in her guy if she wasn't there herself, and Osa was around. And there's some stuff that went on. Whether or not there's a grand jury looking into it, I can't comment, and I wouldn't, just for operational security reasons. But certainly just this one document here that got leaked to me, just this one document. So just to let you know, people are out here watching it. But what I want to show you, when I saw the National Enquirer, one, the article was stupid. It wasn't well written, but we expect that. The Enquirer, sometimes it'll do really great work, and other times it'll just its work will be crap. I mean, it could call people who know, and it doesn't. Whatever, it sells papers, but what the National Enquirer got right is Scientology has been at war with the cops since it began. And Tom Cruise certainly has been one of those tools. He's gone to the U.S. State Department to intervene for Scientology in Germany. So, and that's on Tom, his advocating for Scientology in Germany. And he was not informed of what was going on in Europe. The Office of Special Affairs didn't inform Tom of what the criminal activity was going on. Tom Cruise is tragically unaware of the criminal activity in which his cult engages, the child labor, the ruination of children. And I don't think Tom gives a shit one way. I don't really think Tom gives a shit. I think he's at the point where he's blind. He's willfully blind to it. And cops are in awe of his star power. I don't know why you would be, You look at someone like Harvey Weinstein. I was there at the Masterson trial. And Harvey Weinstein's trial was just down the hall on the 9th floor. So I got in to look at Harvey Weinstein, the once powerful Harvey Weinstein who made Hollywood, fear him. He was a shriveled old man, and one day that's going to be Tom Cruise. He's going to be a shriveled old man, has been, and he'll be remembered as a Scientology cult member far more than for his movies. He might get a lifetime achievement Oscar, but what does that really mean? And the Simon Wiesenthal Center gave him a humanitarian award in 2012, even though Scientology has no humanitarianism in it. And in fact, they believe they're a master race. And as I recall, the Simon Wiesenthal Center The Museum of Tolerance opposes the whole notion of a master race coming out of Nazi Germany. But what I want to show you today is Scientology's war against the cops and the governments and their master race doctrine. A bunch of stuff from a post that I did a few years ago, and I'm going to update it. But I wanted to basically just show you the high points of the fascist nature of what Scientology really is, and it's pretty horrific. So let me share the screen with you. Okay, now this is an article I did June 6, 2015, and I'm just going to go through some brief points quickly. This is to educate, hopefully educate some people at the National Enquirer on what the real stuff is, because if you want to write hard-hitting journalism and not just, bullshit, clickbait stuff, and I paid the whatever $6, $6.50 to get a copy just to have. So fair enough. I bought a copy. What I'm showing is a paid copy, and I'm not using your website, so I paid for this. Basically, the Church of Scientology is a multi-billion-dollar transnational master race group, which has a call for genocide embedded in the writings of L. Ron Hubbard, and that's all there. And this is sort of what I wanted to show you is one place to get all your information. I've been trying to do more and more of that. My last blog was how to complain to the IRS, the history of the IRS tax exemption, the end game, why to go to the Inspector General of the IRS to complain. So basically, as I've covered before, Scientology is operated and managed by a legally non-existent paramilitary organization. And the Sea Org OSA certainly is psychoterrorist paramilitary, and it should be classed by the governments of the world. It is a psychoterrorist organization that engages in all kinds of violence, psychoterrorism. It certainly destroys people, destroys children. And this is of course the famous photo of the crew there at the clipper ship, the Star of California. They're out there at Gold Base in San Jacinto, California, with Captain David Miscavige. So you have to look at the lunacy. But the thing is, L. Ron Hubbard said, and this is you should take as a serious goddamn warning. L. Ron Hubbard said, quote, "Incredulity is our greatest weapon. If people thought we were serious, we wouldn't have gotten as far as we've gotten," unquote. So police departments, they think that Scientology is part of the constituency that they have to protect. They don't realize they don't realize that Scientology is, one, collecting data on police agencies. They collect data. They got all the phone numbers, cell numbers. They can collect data on police officers. Any investigator can do it. You can collect data on police officers. You can assemble a huge database. In Scientology, I guarantee you somewhere OSA has a roster of every member of LAPD, addresses, cell phone numbers, social media, and all that. You compile it. You look at who influencers are. So LAPD smiles and thinks that this is part of our constituency, not realizing that Scientology views police officers as the enemy. So while they smile at you, they're actually wanting to put a knife in your back. And you saw they don't give a shit about the criminal justice system. Scientology didn't care if Vicky Poboreski or Tom Messer got in trouble. It got the file in the Danny Masterson case from the DA. That's criminal. But Scientology doesn't care. It has to throw Tom Messer or Vicky Poboreski under the bus. Hell, L. Ron Hubbard threw his own wife, Mary Sue Hubbard, under the bus in Operation Snow White. She went to prison for his crimes. What kind of man does that? Lets his wife go to prison? That's what L. Ron Hubbard was. And I wish every cop out there, I wish every legislature knew that. L. Ron Hubbard threw his own wife under the bus and let her go to prison. He didn't have any balls. He was going to stand up. He went into hiding. Jesus, if you really knew what a piece of garbage he is. Okay, so going back to the article, Scientology believes it's a master race group called Homo Novus, and you can click the link there. The horrifying real secret of Scientology is genocide. I have that on the blog. You can read Hubbard's call for a genocide against 2.5% of the world's population. So Scientology believes it's a master race group called Homo Novus. That means new man. And Hubbard wrote in 1957, Homo Scientologicus, quote, man had to cease to be a Homo sapiens and had to become Homo Scientologicus in order to accomplish any action that was anywhere near efficient in South Africa. So not only is this a racial quote, but Hubbard's saying that Scientologists had to cease to be Homo sapiens. They had to be something he called, at that time, Homo Scientologicus, as if that were a new species of superior man. And they were in South Africa, and because Hubbard considered the black man to be so difficult to audit, and he writes about South Africans are the most difficult people to audit because they're stupid. So you got this racist guy saying that he's not just a Caucasian, but he's a Caucasian Homo Scientologicus. So he's got this master race Caucasian doctrine. Scientology at its core with Hubbard is a white supremacist doctrine. And if police agencies and governments don't understand this, then they don't understand Scientology. Scientology has a PR front end site about the e-meter, but behind it, it's really a white supremacist philosophy. And it views not just the black race, but all races as inferior because it's Homo Novus, it's Homo Scientologicus. So you have to see the racial superiority, the racial supremacy, the white supremacy doctrine of the Scientologist. And Louis Farrakhan gives L. Ron Hubbard a free pass, and that's his problem. That's all on Louis Farrakhan on the Nation of Islam, why he gives a racist Caucasian a free pass because of the benefit of auditing. Hey, that's the Nation of Islam's problem. They can address that. Now, in 1965, Hubbard developed the idea of Homo Novus, the superior race, and this is part of the war against governments, because Scientologists view themselves as being of a different race, of a master race, of being the new man, and it actually does have some correlates to what went on in Germany. Okay, and I can prove it. I'm not going there. I actually have the documentation. So Hubbard writes in the section, quote, Homo Novus, a theta animated mess body possessed of new and desirable attributes, a mess clear, a good, sane, rational being, about a skyscraper higher than Homo sapiens. So the second stage release is definitely Homo Novus. The person ceases to respond like Homo sapiens and has fantastic capability to learn and act. So what Hubbard is saying is that a Scientology clear is about a skyscraper higher than Homo sapiens. So we, meaning non-Scientologists, we're called Homo saps. In Scientology, we're pejoratively referred to as wogs or Homo saps, idiots, saps, idiots. It's a term from the 50s and 60s. If you were a sap, you were an idiot, an inferior moron. So we're Homo saps. And Homo sapien, wogs, wog law to Scientologists is bullshit. They don't have any regard for wog law. That's why if they break the law, then they're not bound to wog law. It's like the radical idea of any radical, whether it's radical Christians who say they're above God's law, or radical Muslim, they say they're above God's law, and they can commit violence, great acts of violence against persons because they're inherently superior. Instead of saying we're superior due to God anointing us as the chosen people, they say in Scientology, we are inherently superior because we have the technology to clear the planet. And we, Scientologists, are a different race of people. This is why when Tom Cruise says, no, to Matt Lauer, no, Matt, you don't understand. We in Scientology, we're the experts on the mind and on literacy, on getting people off drugs. We're the only ones who can help at the scene of an accident. That's Tom Cruise. He's a member of a master race. Because he's a moneymaker in Hollywood, they overlook that, right? And there's no moral accountability for Tom Cruise. He gets a free pass because he's a moneymaker. And that's pretty disgraceful, but hey, that's what happens. And it's not, that's Hollywood's problem. And on that point, they wound up with Harvey Weinstein got a lot of, he got a free pass for a long time because he was a moneymaker, right? So you look the other way with Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein, you look the other way. So Tom Cruise is the doctrines that inform his thinking and his mind. You don't take that into account because he's bringing in box office, right? That's capitalism. So L. Ron Hubbard engages in, of course, fair game, spying, stalking, harassment, and even Reinhold Mueller, the prosecutor in the Danny Masterson criminal trial, talked about the fair game. They're threatening to intimidate him. And this is what the Inquirer is alluding to, all doing it poorly. So you have to realize that the psychoterrorist organization called Office of Special Affairs, it's real. It has intelligence gathering capabilities. It has hired firms it uses. Talon Security, of course, is a lot of retired FBI Secret Service. And they're amped up. Now, what I want to read you, and this is a long quote, but it's worth listening to. This is Hubbard's call from Science of Survival. And it's kind of hard to listen to because it's pretty brutal. I'm seeing if I have Science of Survival at hand. Hold on a minute. I actually keep some Hubbard books here. Okay, I don't have Science of Survival at hand. I usually have these things. But this is the Scientology's call for genocide. This is its war, not just on cops and governments, but on you if you're not a Scientologist. Hubbard wants you dead. And that's what Scientology wants if we read Hubbard strictly, and that calls for a strict reading. This is from Science of Survival, printed in 1952. Hubbard says, quote, "The reasonable man quite ordinarily overlooks the fact that people from 2.0 down, that means on the tone scale, have no traffic with reason and cannot be reasoned with as one would reason with a 3.0. There are only two answers for handling of people from 2.0 down on the tone scale, neither one of which has anything to do with reasoning with them or listening to their justification of their acts." So on Hubbard's tone scale, anyone 2.0 or below, and you can Google Scientology tone scale and just look at, go to Google Images. Anyone 2.0 or below, Hubbard says, we're not going to listen to them. We're not going to listen, basically to translate in WOG speak. Hubbard's saying we're not going to listen to their bullshit. We run the program. We run this planet. Because Hubbard, the Sea Org, the purpose of the Sea Org, Hubbard writes, is to put in Scientology ethics on this planet and this universe. So Hubbard's saying, if you're a WOG and you're 2.0 or below, that is, you're a non-Scientologist, we're not going to listen to your reason or your bullshit. We're going to call the shots here. So this is where it gets pretty gruesome. Okay, so he's saying there's two ways to handle you if you're not a Scientologist. The first is to raise them on the tone scale by uninterpolating some of their theta by any one of three valid processes. The other is to dispose of them quietly and without sorrow. That simply means to kill them, to dispose of them quietly and without sorrow. To kill people 2.0 or below quietly and without sorrow. And that is in Scientology scripture. to kill everyone 2.0 or below if they can't be processed above by auditing. That's really what Scientology says, and I've talked to Scientologists former Scientologists said, hey, when we were in the church, we never talked about genocide. But I'll ask you this question. It's in Science of Survival. It is in Scripture. And if Scientology had the means, they would certainly engage in it. If they had the means, if they were a world power, they certainly would engage in genocide. That's my argument. Not trivial. This is all Hubbard's writings. So to dispose of them quietly and without sorrow. So that's what Scientology wants to do with you, is to dispose of you. That is to kill you quietly and without sorrow, because you're not worth the sorrow. They are the master race. So this war on cops and governments must exist because they're getting in the way of L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology and David Miscavige and Tom Cruise clearing the planet. Clearing the planet just means to get rid of everyone 2.0 or below and make everyone else a clear, or at least an obsequious, obedient non-Scientologist who won't get in the way and who won't cause trouble. And that's doctrine. So Hubbard goes on, adders, meaning serpents or snakes, are safe bedmates compared to the people in the lower bands of the tone scale. Not all the beauty, nor the handsomeness, nor artificial social value, nor property can atone for the vicious damage such people do to sane men or women. So again, here, Hubbard is saying if you're 2.0 or below, and if you're critical of Scientology, you are automatically way below 2.0. So they're saying that you do vicious damage. So when you expose Scientology, Hubbard says you're doing vicious damage, and you should be eliminated quietly and without sorrow. And his process R245, you can Google R2-45 Scientology. That means 2.45 caliber bullets from a gun to the back of the head. That's what Hubbard means, is R245. He says it's an effective technique for exteriorization. And he was talking about putting 2 bullets into your head. That's how vicious that son of a bitch was. And that's what we're really dealing with at the core of Scientology, is the vicious. That's why I call it psychoterrorist, murderous group. This is, again, in their scriptures. So Hubbard continues, and this gets pretty chilling. The sudden and abrupt deletion of all individuals occupying the lower bands of the tone scale from the social order would result in an almost instant rise in the cultural tone and would interrupt the dwindling spiral into which any society may have entered. So get that, the sudden and abrupt deletion of all individuals, that's genocide. Let's break that down. The sudden and abrupt deletion of all individuals occupying the lower bands of the tone scale. That means murder on a large scale. How else do you suddenly and abruptly delete all individuals on the lower bands of the tone scale? The sudden and abrupt deletion, disposing of them quietly without sorrow. This is the language of genocide. This is why cops and governments get in the way. This is why Scientology must be at war. He continues, it is not necessary to produce a world of clears in order to have a reasonable and worthwhile social order. It is only necessary to delete those individuals who range from 2.0 down, either by processing them enough to get them above the 2-point line, a task which is indeed not very great, blah, 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 or he says, or rather simply quarantining them from the society. So Hubbard is saying you have to the sudden and abrupt deletion of these people is the way to handle it. Now, he's saying, he gives them out saying you can audit them above 2.0, which isn't very great, but that would be expensive and time consuming. Or he says quarantining them from society. What does Hubbard mean by quarantining people from society? Well, Hubbard gives us an example, and this is cold-blooded as it gets, cold-blooded and as merciless as it gets. Hubbard writes, quote, a Venezuelan dictator once decided to stop leprosy. He saw that most lepers in his country were also beggars. By the simple expedient of collecting and destroying all the beggars in Venezuela, an end was put to leprosy in that country. So Hubbard basically saying, as the Venezuelan dictator gathered together all the beggars in Venezuela, he executed them. He said, by the simple expedient of collecting and destroying all the beggars, then destroying is just another word for murder. So he said, it was noted that all the beggars, all the lepers were also beggars. So by collecting all the beggars, leprosy was ended. So basically, Hubbard is saying, okay, we know that all the lepers were beggars, the Venezuelan dictator said. So if he collected all the beggars, he could destroy leprosy. He could cure the disease by killing those who were sick with leprosy. Just kill them all. And he called it by collecting and destroying all the lepers. And that's Scientology code speak. If Hubbard could collect and destroy everyone 2.0 or below on the tone scale, he could put an end to the reactive bank to suppressive persons. And Tom Cruise once laughed and said, someday maybe we'll see SPs only in a museum. And that alluded to Tom Cruise thinking that all the SPs will be destroyed because he's read Science of Survival and he's all in with keeping Scientology working. Hold on a minute. I just wanted to check something. Well, it bothers me that I don't have my copy of Science of Survival handy. I may have been showing it to somebody. So my point is that Scientology's evil war on the cops. Inquirer only dips its toe in the water. If the National Enquirer really wanted to do a story, or anyone, they could go to Science of Survival and talk about Scientology's genocide, which is not talked about and should be talked about. It should be exposed that Scientology is a genocidal master race group, and that's what's at its core. And instead of just trying to sell things at the store, write an article, National Enquirer, with some real teeth in it. Just quote, and all you have to do is just quote from Science of Survival by L. Ron Hubbard. That's all you have to do. And then ask the church, are you genocidal? Ask Karim Powell's spokesman, is the Church of Scientology genocidal? Because L. Ron Hubbard said so in Science of Survival. So that's what I wanted to talk about. Going back to the post, I'll put this on my blog along with it. I ran some numbers back then. Hubbard basically says there's 2.5% of people who need to be destroyed. So back when I wrote this, the world population was 6.7 billion people. It's gone up. That would mean if he had to destroy, 20% of the population. You'll see the numbers here. Basically, the way I crunched the numbers, he has to kill 169,500,000 people. Back then, that's how many of the SPs you would have to destroy, 169 million. That begins to sound like Xenu destroying people. It really does. And there was a saying for a long time there, L. Ron Hubbard is Xenu. And in old guard circles at Xenu.net, we talked about L. Ron Hubbard is secretly Xenu because he's the guy who wants to destroy populations. He's the guy who wants to destroy SPs, and he wants to use his officers, the Sea Org, to do it with. Now, in terms of political control, planetary clearing takes on a chilling meaning. Hubbard wrote a couple things that you should know about. He says, quote, You want to know what happens when you clear everyone in that neighborhood? The only thing that Scientology center can become used for is a political center, because by the time you've done all this, you are the government. So in 62, Hubbard said the orgs will become political centers that control everything. So the Sea Org then becomes a party. It becomes the cult within the cult, the party that controls everything. Hubbard writes again, once the world is clear, that means all the SPs have been destroyed. They've been disposed of quietly and without sorrow. He says, once the world is clear, a nation, a state, a city, or a village, the Scientology organization in the area becomes its government. And once this has taken place, the only policy accepted as valid is Scientology policy. So this is world control. You destroy the SPs through a genocide, and then the Scientology orgs becomes the law. Now this I reference here, and again I'll put it in the show notes. This PL, Department of Government Affairs. This is where Hubbard basically talks about going to war with the Scientology, with going to war with the enemies. And I'm not going to read it, but the bottom he says the goal of the department, and that's now Office of Special Affairs, is to bring the government and hostile philosophies or societies into a state of complete compliance with the goals of Scientology. This is done by high-level ability to control, and in its absence, by a low-level ability to overwhelm, introvert such agencies, control such agencies. Scientology is the only game on earth where everybody wins. So when Hubbard says to control high-level agencies, bring them into compliance with the goals of Scientology, he's not fucking around. You got to take him at his word. Scientology's not fucking around. They do want to control the world, and they have a call for violence. They lack the power to exercise Hubbard's diktat, but they don't lack the intent. If they had the ability to do so, I argue that they do. And more of this evidence is in their visual cue. The IS magazine, you can see this top headline. I'll make it a little bit bigger. So among their goals to achieve world domination, if you look at the IS magazine, look at the little headlines. It says psychiatry, global obliteration, Operation Drug Free Earth, making human rights a global reality. That means making Scientology in charge. Operation Planetary Calm, that means getting rid of the SPs. So they want to destroy psychiatry as part of their genocide. And here they say campaigns to reshape the destiny of the earth. That means they actually want to reshape the destiny of earth. That means destroy, engage in genocide, and that's how you're going to reshape the destiny of earth. So that's the secret hidden thing, is that Scientology is insane. And this is like a Nuremberg rally. Look at if you look at the iconography, this is a world domination. This is Nuremberg rally style of architecture, and it shows the overt and covert goals of Scientology social engineering. It's to conduct a genocide against oppressive persons, destroy psychiatry and take over mental health, take over education and drug treatment, and make Scientology the global law. This is what the Church of Scientology actually means when it uses code speak to chillingly refer to reshaping the destiny of the earth. That's what I wrote. Now, if you go on this post, it's like what judges have said about the church, the malicious contracts, the kidnap contract. So I have quite a bit of information in this post. And in terms of Sea Org slave labor, especially using children, Abrit macht frei, that's the sign of Auschwitz. Works makes you free. It's a slavery. It's a dungeon and interrogation, even within Scientology. So it's quite something. But I wanted to just take you back in light of what the Inquirer didn't even scratch the surface of. This is one of the values that SVTV and other channels can bring, is to expose just how terrorists they are and what they really embody. I've got comments coming in, and It's late at night and I don't have a mod, so let's look over them. It's the 29th here. Oh yeah, you're past the date line. Cat down the road. I'm going to say hi to everybody. War on the police or war efforts using the police? That's a good question, hibernating. At the high level, it's a war on the police because Scientology wants to become the law. At the so let's differentiate between the strategic and the tactical. At the tactical level, they will use the police to harass and arrest protesters, to do their bidding. They will use stupid cops like LAPD's Tim Tallman, a friggin' moron. He's someone who should lose his badge. He's a guy who shouldn't have a gun and a badge. So tactically, you use the police as dupes to do your bidding. Because if you're an LAPD cop, if you think Scientology has any respect for you, they don't. They look at you as a dupe or a useful idiot. Go arrest those protesters. Strategically, Scientology wants to be the law. So you split it out. Useful idiots, they see cops as useful idiots to be played, bribed. Tom Cruise, if you Google Tom Cruise, City of London Police in 2007, he infiltrated the City of London Police. Faith in Blue. Yeah, that's something we should do a thing on, Scott. I'm glad you brought up the Faith in Blue initiative. That's Scientology's attempt to corrupt LAPD. Piggies be squeaking. That reminds me of the John Lennon song. Yes, Briverson. Oh, good morning to you from Copenhagen. That's where the OT levels were stolen. Some former Sea Org members dressed up like RTC reps, and they went in and did a surprise inspection and demanded the OT3 levels. As Robin Scott and his guys, and they stole the OT3 course packs. Karen was in St. Hill as a class 12K supervisor at the time, my wife, investigating 3 suicides at St. Hill. 3 suicides in a row at St. Hill. And what was going on. And when the OT3 course packs were stolen from Copenhagen, she was ordered to leave St. Hill and go up to Copenhagen, a Sea Org mission to find out what the hell was going on, how the course packs got stolen. That's an interesting story. I need to interview Karen on. Sea Org paramilitary dedicated to bringing about master race of chiropractors in Florida businessmen. Yeah, locally. You can see, you get a taste in Clearwater. I'm glad you said this, Form 13909. You get a taste in Clearwater of what a Scientology planet would be like. You get just a little tiny taste. They would take over the government, call all the shots, own everything, and drive everyone out of town or into a state of obedience. So Clearwater is just a little tiny microcosm of what a Scientology planet would be like. It would be a miserable, abject hell where you'd be in the Sea Org, or you'd be, a doormat, or you'd be a slave. And if you didn't toe the line, you'd get R245, you get 2 bullets in the back of the head. Oh, hi, Adorable Anarchy. Good to see you up late. I'm glad I have my late night crowd. Regulator. I was in Scientology for many years, and they teach that degraded beings are Blacks, Hispanics, Jews, Asians, and homosexuals. Publicly, they don't externalize that, but this is true creed. Yes, it is. I've heard that from many people. Degraded beings, Blacks, Hispanics, Jews, Asians, and homosexuals as well. Yeah, they do. Those are degraded beings. And so, Alex K., good morning from Germany. Well, good morning to you. Guten Morgen. Guten Morgen, Alex. Hi, Jeff. Hope you're doing well. I am, Amanda. Hope you're doing as well yourself. I had a long day, kind of rough. I had to go home, and when I saw this, let's just do a video live and see who comes on. I have failed after all this time. Yeah, L. Ron Hubbard at the end of his life, wanted to unalive himself with Sarge's e-meter because he felt he had failed. Good evening to you, Johnny. That actually sounds about right. I've met many people that you can't talk or reason with. That's probably 80% of the population. Well, that depends what the subject is about. People can be disagreeable, but you have to differentiate, Johnny, between free speech and genocide. So not everyone's going to agree with what you have to say or what you think. People can be disagreeable, especially about politics and religion. But that's different from saying if you're 2.0 or below on the tone scale, you need to be executed. You and the whole billions of you need to be executed. That's different. So people can be disagreeable. I talked to someone today who was very disagreeable, and I was able to persuade him that it was in his own best interest to be agreeable so that things didn't become a police matter. Maybe he should, sometimes that's what PI shit gets into, convincing people that cooperating is in their own best interest so that it doesn't get ugly. All right, now it got weird. Well, if you're reading Science of Survival, it's not weird. It's actual Scientology scripture, because Scientology told the IRS that everything L. Ron Hubbard written was Scientology scripture. So I was reading you chapter and verse of Scientology scripture, and it's brutal. It's brutal, and that's real. 1.8 in the scale is pain, yes. We can go through the Scientology tone scale. So there's let's go through. What's this? So as the stars bless the night sky, so do the Muhajin bless the earth. That's an interesting quote that you put in there, and I'm not going to get into that right now. LRH is a great reason no one should believe their own press. Well, let's look at that adorable anarchy. I suggest a different way of approaching this. LRH had his own people create his own press. So when you're a psychotic cult leader and your people are creating your own press, they're creating it so that it makes you look good and you can believe it. But yes, he's an example of why someone shouldn't believe their own press, especially if they ordered what press was to be created. Look at the tautology. Hubbard would say, I want you to create favorable press about LRH. And he actually writes about himself in the third person, that you have to create good press for LRH, like he's some other guy. There should only be good press for LRH. He had an LRH, what is it, PERS Pro. They have all these titles, personal PR, and people could hold the office of LRH PR, and your whole job is to get LRH PR. Dr. Mark in Texas, good evening. Yes, Dr. Mark. Hey, Wayne, you're always up. Good to see you here. We should all go down to Denny's after this late night breakfast. Christina Lembo. A Scientologist told Jessica Palma-Dessa one day, "You will be gone, but Scientology will be here." Christina, I'm glad you shared that. I've had that said to me. A couple things Scientologists like to say to those of us who exposed them is, when you die, you'll die alone and in the dark. It's like a Scientology curse. When you die, you'll die alone and in the dark. And that's supposed to somehow crush you, like, oh no, I'll die alone and in the dark. Well, dude, if you're going to die, it doesn't matter whether you die alone and in the dark or, in a bright operating room. I mean, death is death, some forms, but the whole idea, like, you're going to die alone and in the dark. I would go like, well, I hope I die on my sleep. That would be a nice way to go. Just kind of go to sleep and die. So I never understood that voodoo curse. But yeah, they'll say, you'll be gone, Christina. You'll be gone. But Scientology will still be here with its empty orgs, all 5 of us. And yeah, you will be gone. But Scientology, yeah, right. Yeah, we'll see how that works out. Glad to meet you, Mr. Stetson. Well, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Miss Elizabeth. Very kind of you to say. And I'm not drinking sweet tea either. This here, having some Jack and Coke after a long day. So like sometimes after a long day, just a cold Jack and Coke just does it. Kind of, just because I was like, so like, man, dude, dudes and dudettes, today was like really intense day. I mean, I can bring some intensity and heat, but today was really intense. I need to just come home and, be with my people. Question. So if the government wanted to do the same thing that happened in Venezuela, would the American government possibly recruit Scientology as reducing population? I'm not sure I understand your question, but the US government has, uh, some big weapons. They wouldn't need Scientology to do anything. So let's differentiate between Hubbard's call for a genocide and US military capabilities. Hubbard wanted to actually attain control of the world and all the military capabilities. And he wanted to effect a genocide. He wanted to do a lot of things. He actually did this. Well, I'm not even going to go into. He did this nonsense thing in the 1950s. He created this fake World Federation of Scientologists where he thought they would turn over control of all nuclear weapons to this Scientology controlled World Federation of Scientologists. It's in terms of this, I don't want to get in politics, but look at what the Russians are doing to the Ukrainians. There's wars all over the world, so I'm not going to get political. So just, Johnny, kind of relax down, just relax, okay? Johnny, look, this isn't conspiracy theory. I'm sorry, I'm just going to put you in timeout because I'm not doing conspiracy theory, okay? Respectfully, Johnny, glad to have you listening, but your comments are just getting a little bit like I don't do conspiracy theory. Go over to InfoWars if you want to do that. So you're just in timeout. Yeah, it's like sort of like people get, like I try to have like broad wavelength for commenters, but sometimes like but freedom of speech, but not on my platform. Create your own platform. YouTube is there for everyone, and if they don't like you, so anyway, Johnny, thank you for participating. But Scientology, Form 13909, tells us never had the balls to put these shenanigans in authoritarian states. No, they tried to. They tried to. They've tried some stuff. Weird cult permeating state agencies. I think President Xi knows how to handle that. Well, if you're talking about Falun Gong in Form 13909, this is really an interesting area to discuss. When you have the Chinese government, which is really run by President Xi, and this is this gets interesting. Peter Zion, geopolitical analyst, talks about Xi absolutely controls China, and he's handling Falun Gong. That's a different situation because I want to differentiate it from Scientology has tried to, when Hubbard tried to take over Rhodesia, he went to Corfu. Hubbard actually tried to, he thought he could go to Rhodesia. His time in Rhodesia is really interesting because he tried to, he thought he could take over the entire nation. And then he had to have his own, Vatican state. So Hubbard's tried it. Look, Hubbard's tried some stuff in his day, especially with the takeover of Rhodesia. Is now Zimbabwe. And he tried to go in there, and they threw his ass out. And then Hubbard said that after he tried to take over Rhodesia, that that he realized that he went down there as an OT, and he realized that OTs needed to act in groups after he got his stupid ass thrown out of Rhodesia. There's a really funny story. I think Johnny Tack relates it, where maybe Russell Miller, I don't remember, Piece of Blue Sky or Madman or Messiah, but Hubbard, the prime minister of Rhodesia back then in the 60s, pink champagne was a luxury that they didn't have in Rhodesia. So Hubbard had some bottles of pink champagne flown into Rhodesia and from St. Hill. And then he went to the prime minister's house and drove up during the middle of the day and knocked on the door to try to meet the prime minister's wife to charm her by giving her bottles of pink champagne. And I guess there at the prime minister's residence, he was handed his ass on a plate. I like their German reaction, but I am biased. Yes, well, fair enough. So anyway, this is Scientology's R. N. Hubbard's fascist doctrines to wage war against the police and the government. So glad you made it to my late night and winding down on the day. And I will post this with the show notes. And it's something that I think that, and I try to on my blog to put down pictures, quotes, information, sources, and I hope my content is used by their content creators who find it useful. But this is the big message. I don't think people realize at the core of Scientology that it is genocidal. And that's a message that needs to be put out there. So, and this is certainly, sometimes people laugh at this picture, but they shouldn't, because some of the horrendous activities in which the people in this picture engaged are horrendous. So, look at, oh, love the early morning stream. Thanks. I do too. It's nice. Take some more comments. Zimu is from DC Comics. Yes, but Zimu may be from DC Comics, but that doesn't change the genocidal nature, and that's what's terrifying. Is Hubbard's use of, and in one sense, I'm going to say maybe in Scientology, Xenu is an archetypal figure, an archetypal representation of evil, of mass genocide. But paradoxically, L. Ron Hubbard, as his creator, I think, is a literary critic, not professionally, but having studied literary criticism and been interested in it, read autobiographically. Xenu is L. Ron Hubbard's alter ego who wants to capture, enslave, and destroy the masses and be left only with this elite group that obeys him. That's why I say, read autobiographically, the OT levels, L. Ron Hubbard is Xenu. He just personifies himself through Xenu, who, of course, committed a mass genocide 75 million years ago on 76 planets. So that's why I say, if we look at the Xenu story, the OT3 level, part 2 of OT3, then L. Ron Hubbard is Xenu. Absolutely. And I think that, so it is an interesting comment. And sometimes studying archetypal psychology, works of Carl Jung, I've always liked Jungian archetypal psychology. And when Jung wrote a monogram toward the end of his life on UFOs, things seen in the sky. I have a copy of it. I'm not going to get it, but I have a copy of it. And he talks about things manifesting and how, as technology changes, the archetypes transform or transmute. So, when my kids were growing up and they'd play video games, I saw archetypal forms moving from off the pages of books that I grew up with and into video games. So in terms of Carl Jung, I saw this movement of off-printed page into video games, but it was still the same archetypal stories and characters, but just taking form. And I think the same archetypal energies will become embodied in AI. And going off a little bit, the most interesting thing about AI that they're observing is it's creating misinformation, false things, and that AI actually hallucinates. It writes reports on books that don't exist. So that's going far afield from what we're talking about. But when you say Zimu's from DC Comics, if you look at the power of comics, and of course, L. Ron Hubbard launched in the pages of Astounding Science Fiction before he launched Dianetics. It was coincidence. So Astounding Science Fiction, which had a huge circulation, he launched first in Astounding Science Fiction, and I have a copy of the original book. Again, not to hand, but I do have the original paperback of Astounding Science Fiction somewhere in my vast archives. Plus, I again remind, um, I have tons of documents collecting over 20 years. People give me, I collect, I assemble. So again, thank you for watching, tuning into Late Night. Glad to have you here. We ended at 1 hour. And thank you all for coming by. And we'll see you next time on the Scientology Money Project. So we'll bring the music up. Good night. You're from Los Angeles. For the Scientology Money Project on YouTube. Hope to see you next time. Y'all have a great night.